In January 2002, Yorkshire Police discovered the body of a young Korean woman in a metal suitcase. This gruesome discovery prompted an investigation that led to the arrest of one of the country's most horrific killers. Kim Kyoso was born in South Korea in the same year, and very little information is known about him. However, it is known that in September 2000, after a failed marriage, he traveled from his country to London with the intention of studying English in the capital of the United Kingdom. However, in October 2001, the man quit his studies and began to earn a living by renting out two apartments, one on Eagle Street near Holborn, known as London's legal district, and the other on Gasta Street in the Poplar neighborhood. To promote his business, Kim advertised his services on a website. Most of his guests were visiting students, and many of them were Korean, just like himself. At the time, Kim had a girlfriend named Marika Ishimura, a young woman of Japanese descent who worked as a hairdresser. The couple lived in the master bedroom of the Eagle Street apartment, with two Korean tenants occupying the second room. Those who knew Kim often described him as a kind, polite, and helpful man who was always smiling. He was charming to everyone, but especially to young girls. Somehow, he managed to make people believe that he came from a wealthy family and was in a comfortable position in terms of income and lifestyle. However, it was all a sham. In reality, Kim's finances were a mess. He had a huge amount of debt, and all of his credit accounts had been canceled. In addition, Marika was frequently using illegal substances. By October 2001, their relationship had fallen apart, and the young woman, who was almost 10 years younger than the man, spent little time in the apartment. It was in this context that Kim met Jin Yo-jong, a girl from the South Korean province who was staying in the apartment he was renting for just 3 days. Jin was studying French literature at a Korean university, and as part of her studies spent several months as an exchange student in Lyon before returning to her homeland where her brothers and parents were waiting for her. Jin arrived in the English capital on Wednesday, October 24, 2001, and was scheduled to return to France on Saturday, October 27th. She found Kim through his ad on the internet about renting a room in an apartment on Eagle Street. However, the girl's plans were interrupted in the worst possible way, and her short life was cut short horribly and unexpectedly. On the night of October 26th, the day before she returned to France, the 21-year-old girl was brutally attacked by Kim. Details of the incident were never revealed, but it is known that when the two of them were left alone, the man ended Jean's life by wrapping duct tape around her face, making it impossible for her to breathe. He also bound her wrists. However, before putting her through this ordeal, Kim forced Jin to name her credit card passwords, information he intended to use later. He then stuffed her into a metal suitcase that he hid in the master bedroom closet. There, the man kept it for the next 5 days. When guests returned to the flat that same Friday and asked where Jean was, the man said she had decided to return to France the previous day, and he had taken her to the train station. A similar story, but with some changes, he told to the girl's friends and relatives, who began to approach him with great concern when Jean did not return to France at the appointed time and seemed to have disappeared without explanation. On Saturday, October 27th, one day after the horrific crime, Kim took 2 of his victims' cards and began emptying her bank accounts. First, he attempted to use the Korean Kookmin bank card, which was a family account opened by Jin's parents for emergencies and which she never used. The first theft attempt failed because the man entered the card's PIN number incorrectly. But a few days later, Kim tried again and managed to withdraw $1,990. The man then tried to withdraw more money, but Jean's family account was already empty. Kim gave the card to a young Korean woman, whom he asked to go to Paris and withdraw as much money as possible. Although this request should have aroused suspicion, Kim made up a story that the card belonged to Merrick, his girlfriend, and also came up with a reason why he needed to withdraw the money in Paris. Kim wanted his excuse to look convincing so that the girl would agree to do his bidding. In reality, it was much more sinister than that. Kim not only wanted to get his hands on all of his victims' money, but he was also trying to back up his story that Jin had gone to Paris. To do this, he needed to make it appear that the girl had used her card in the French capital. He wanted to leave a false trail for the authorities, who would undoubtedly soon launch an investigation into the student's sudden disappearance. Late on the evening of Wednesday, 31st of October, Kim took the suitcase containing Jean's body and put it in the boot of a hired car. He then drove nearly 4 hours to the village of Ask in North Yorkshire. There, on the edge of a country lane, he dumped the suitcase with Jean's body and then returned to the flat. Kim continued to live as if nothing had happened. He rented out rooms and repeated the same excuses every time someone who knew the victim asked about her. Between 17th and 18th of November, a young Korean woman named Sung In moved into Kim's duplex on Gasta Street. At first, she shared the master bedroom with a friend named Moon. But a few days later, on 29th of November, Moon had to return to her native Korea and her friend was left alone in the flat. Those who knew Moon described her as an outgoing girl who always had a smile on her face. In her family, she was considered a model daughter. Information about her studies is somewhat contradictory. Some sources say that she studied hotel management in London, while others claim that she studied at a Korean university and came to London to learn English. During their stay at the duplex, Sung and Kim became friends and very close, but it was not clear if there was any romantic or intimate relationship between them. However, some people who saw their interactions described them as brother and sister. In addition, Sung's friend later revealed that the girl told her that she thought Kim was attracted to her, but never commented that the feeling was mutual. Nevertheless, on 3rd December 2001, Kim asked all the occupants of the Eagle Street flat to vacate the premises, including Marika, with whom he was no longer in a relationship at that time. He then left the flat himself and moved to a duplex on Gasta Street, where Sung lived. Over the next few days, they maintained a close relationship, and Sung began to suspect that Kim's outwardly handsome mask hid a real monster. Sung was last seen alive on 7th of December when she dined at a Korean restaurant with Kim. The girl could not have guessed what terrible fate awaits her in the coming hours. Kim treated Sung the same way he had done to Jin a few months earlier. He used duct tape to bind her wrists and ankles, then stuffed a sock in her mouth and taped her mouth and nose shut. As a result, the 22-year-old girl suffocated and died a slow and agonizing death. Continuing his brutal actions, Kim made sure his victim's bank details were available before proceeding with his gruesome plan. He then hid her body in the duplex's hall wardrobe and sealed it so no one could discover it. There it remained for months. When Sung's friends asked about her whereabouts, Kim said she had taken a job at a hotel where she was given a place to live. Sung had 2 bank accounts, one at NatWest and one at Kookmin Bank in Korea, which was also a family emergency account, and she used it only once. Kim used the NatWest card to withdraw $240 from an ATM. He used the money to buy a ticket for 13 December to travel to Toronto, Canada. Before leaving, he used a Korean Sung card to steal a further $1,200. In Toronto, he managed to rent a flat where he continued to rent out rooms, following the same business model as in London. The man planned to stay in Canada for a year or two, and at first it seemed that he would be able to escape the consequences of these 2 horrific crimes. However, the story was far from over. While Kim went on with his daily life, disposing of Jin and hiding her body in a suitcase, her loved ones did not stop searching. When she didn't return in time from England, her friends in France contacted her relatives in Korea, but couldn't find the girl. Her brother posted information about Jin on a Korean missing persons website. It was there that she was spotted by a Korean policeman who was studying at a university in London at the time. The fact that she appeared to be another of many missing people caught the officer's attention, because a few days earlier, the lifeless body of a young girl of Asian or Oriental descent had been found stuffed into a suitcase. This happened on the 18th of November. It was later learned that the suitcase had first been seen 2 weeks earlier. However, as it was a rural area with few people living there, no one alerted the authorities until one of the locals tried to pick up the suitcase. When he was unable to pick it up, it became suspicious and police arrived on the scene. At night, when officers illuminated the suitcase with a torch, they saw human eyes and hair. A suitcase filled with the super material was taken to Yorkshire morgue, where it was finally opened. Inside, they found the body of a girl, almost completely naked except for her bra. The victim was just over 150 centimeters tall, and her limbs and head were wrapped in duct tape. Authorities immediately noticed the unusual tape used for the wrapping. It was dark blue in color with a distinctive printed pattern of male faces. It was soon discovered that it was tape designed by London-based artists Gilbert and George, which went into production in September 2000 and was sold only at the Tate Gallery's UK branches in London, Liverpool, and Cornwall. Authorities determined that a total of 850 units of the tape were sold. This information proved crucial to the investigation. On examining the body, the pathologist was struck by the lack of signs of injuries, indicative of a struggle, and concluded that the victim had probably been immobilized in some way before his head was bound. He offered two possible explanations. The first suggested that the girl had been drugged with some substance that was not detected in the toxicological test. The second option was that the victim was somehow persuaded or threatened into letting herself be tied up. The forensic report began with the results of the hair analysis, which confirmed that the victim was a native Southeast Asian. However, police were unable to identify her from fingerprints and dental records. It was not until 2 January 2002 that they were able to identify the victim after Korean police officers, who had seen a report that Jin was missing and that a body had been found in a suitcase, contacted Yorkshire Police to alert them to a possible connection. Police liaised with the South Korean embassy and were able to access the South Korean fingerprint database and subsequently identified the victim as Jin Hyo-jung. Shortly before this, on 18th of December 2001, Sonahea had been reported missing by friends who had been unable to contact her. On 7th January 2002, the Metropolitan Police Serious Crime Directorate became aware of the discovery of Jin's body and decided that the cases might be linked. Police and Yorkshire detectives therefore conducted a joint investigation led by Chief Constable Alan Ankers. As Sonny was initially reported missing and her body had not yet been found, officers took on the task of investigating Jin's case. Thanks to information provided by the victim's friends and family, they were able to trace the girl's movements back to her stay at a flat on Eagle Street. There, authorities discovered a roll of the very tape used to bind and strangle Jin. Forensic investigators found traces of the young Korean woman's blood on stickers of the material, as well as on the walls, sofa, and carpet in the room. With regard to Son's disappearance, police were aware that she was living as a lodger at a house on Gasta Street. Upon investigating both this property and the Eagle Street property, officers discovered that both were operated by Kim Kyo-so, who was in Canada at the time. Analysis of the man's phone records revealed that he was in the North Yorkshire area where the suitcase had been dumped during a search of the car Kim had rented in October 2001. Traces of Jin's blood were also found. With all the evidence pointing to a common link between the victims, authorities had a prime suspect. On 17th of January 2002, the Metropolitan Police held a joint press conference with North Yorkshire Police, asking for any information about both girls. However, as fate would have it, Kim briefly returned to London and the man was arrested at an internet cafe that same evening. He was charged with the murder of Jin Hyo-jung and was immediately taken into custody. On 21st January, he appeared before the magistrate's court, where his counsel requested bail, but the application was refused and the accused was remanded in custody pending trial, which was due to commence on the 28th of the same month. However, as is often the case, the court date was postponed to a later date. In the meantime, the investigation into Sung's disappearance continued. On 14th of March 2002, a builder named Paul Mead was doing renovations in the bathroom of a duplex on Gasta Street when he noticed a large number of flies flying out of one of the panels. This seemed suspicious to the man, and he reported it to the authorities. The next day, police went to the home and found a sealed wardrobe in the hallway. Inside was a stack of foul-smelling clothes, and behind it was the naked body of a girl wrapped in a duvet cover. It was later determined that the remains were Sung. Police had already visited the duplex on 9 January 2002 during the initial investigation, but they only found clothing belonging to the first victim. Officers failed to notice the sealed wardrobe in which the second body was hidden. It soon became apparent that the decorative tape that had been wrapped around Sung's face, wrists, and ankles was the same as that worn by the first victim. In this case, the lower part of the face was in a squeeze. It should be noted that there were no signs of sexual assault on either victim. Additional DNA tests were conducted on items hidden in the wardrobe, and it was found that some of the clothing items and a pair of shoes belonged to Jean. On 4 April 2002, Kim was charged with Sung's murder and was ordered to appear at the Central Criminal Court on 7 May to confess. At this hearing, Kim Kyo, with the help of an interpreter, pleaded not guilty to the murders of Jin Hyo-jong and Sung Hae. Although the trial was scheduled for 30th September of the same year, it was not until March 2003 that the accused appeared in court. Kim refused to answer questions during cross-examination and then began to testify. At trial, in the presence of the jury, the defendant pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of his son. Kim stated that it was an erotic game with a tragic but accidental ending. However, the court did not accept this guilty plea and the trial continued. Kim was never able to explain why he committed the two offenses in front of the jury. Prosecutor John Dunlidlow questioned the defendant's possible motives, saying that he could have been driven by intimate problems as well as purely financial ones, as Kim was heavily in debt. He also raised the possibility that the man could have committed such atrocities only because he took pleasure in slowly and painfully taking the lives of both girls. The prosecutor endeavored to emphasize the horror that both victims must have experienced in the last moments of their lives. Also taking the witness stand was pathologist Christopher Miroy, who was part of the team that examined the bodies of the two victims. The expert stated that he had never seen such a way in which Kim cut the girls' lives short in any case. Marika Ishimura, the defendant's former partner, then testified. She stated that the decorative tape used to commit the offenses belonged to her and that she had bought it from the Tate Gallery in London for use on special occasions. Kim Jung-gon, a friend of the defendant, then spoke. The man told the jury that in late 2001, he waited on him while buying a suitcase that was supposedly meant for his girlfriend's belongings. However, the witness said they ended up not buying any because they were too expensive. Finally, on 25th March 2003, Kim Kyo-so was found guilty of murdering two young female students and sentenced to 2 life terms. After the verdict was announced, the judge addressed the defendant and described his crimes as exceptionally brutal. He stated that Kim had cut short the lives of 2 innocent people who trusted him and considered him a friend, and that he had done so in a particularly brutal manner that must have caused the victims unimaginable suffering. Friends, share your thoughts on this story in the comments. I'm interested to know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to stay up to date with new videos and like this video. Thank you for your support.